I'm Yugit.
The scene that still haunts me like a nightmare happened last Saturday. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, watching the street. The air was cool and still, but my heart was in turmoil. Suddenly, a U-Haul box truck rumbled onto the street and pulled up in front of my house. My brother Ethan was behind the wheel and my parents, Robert and Carol, were in the car behind. As they parked and started unloading furniture, my mother, Carol, walked up to me with a look of entitlement. "Judith, Ethan has 2 kids. You're single. This house is wasted on you." Her voice carried across the street, and I felt a cold anger rising within me. My father, Robert, stood behind her, arms crossed, nodding as if this was a done deal. Ethan, meanwhile, was unloading boxes, as if he owned the place. I looked at the 3 of them, and something inside me snapped. I'd always been the one to keep the peace, but this time, I knew I had to stand up for myself. Let me take you back a few years. After graduating from college, I landed a job at a construction firm. I started at the bottom as a junior site engineer, wearing steel-toed boots that gave me blisters and a hard hat that was 2 sizes too big. But I worked hard, staying late and never asking my family for a cent. 8 years later, I became a project manager overseeing commercial builds across 2 counties. With my savings from years of hard work, I bought a beautiful 3-bedroom house on Elm Street. It was a charming Victorian with a wrap, a round porch, and a large backyard. I put down $45,000, 20% of the $225,000 asking price, and took on the mortgage and insurance myself. The day I signed the deed, I was overjoyed. I called my parents, my hands still shaking from holding the pen. "Mom, I bought a house," I said, excitement in my voice. There was a long silence on the other end. Then my mother replied, "That's nice, dear. Ethan's having a hard time with his divorce. We're worried about the kids." I sat there, looking at the steering wheel, the ink on my signature still wet, feeling completely brushed aside. I told her the address, and she promised to come and see it soon. But that was 3 years ago, and they've never once visited. They've never seen the garden I planted, the rooms I renovated, or the life I've built in this house. Ethan is 5 years older than me. Growing up, it felt like we were from different worlds. When he turned 16, my father bought him a used Ford Mustang. I got a second-hand bike. When Ethan moved into his first apartment after college, my parents paid the deposit and the first 3 months' rent. When I graduated, my father said, "You're smart, Judith. You'll figure it out."
And I did.
Ethan has always been a bit of a drifter. He's had several jobs over the years, a salesman, a delivery driver, a barista, but he never seems to stick with any of them. He always blames his bosses or co-workers. After his divorce from his wife, Sarah, he got custody of his 2 kids, Lily and Max, every other weekend. And my parents have always taken his side, believing that the world is against him. 2 weeks ago, my mother called me. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was working on a home improvement project. "Judith, we've been thinking," she said. Those words always spell trouble in my family. "Ethan needs a place to stay with the kids. Your father's back can't handle him sleeping on the couch anymore. Your house has 3 bedrooms, and it's just you. It makes sense." I put down my tools and said firmly, "No, Mom. This is my house." She tried to convince me, saying it was just temporary, until Ethan got back on his feet. But I knew that Ethan had been getting back on his feet for years. She then tried the guilt trip. "So, you'd let your niece and nephew be homeless?" I replied, "Lily and Max have a home with Sarah. They just need a place to stay with their father on weekends. But this is my home, and I'm not giving it up." My father got on the phone and said, "Don't be selfish, Judith. Family helps family." I was furious. "I help plenty, Dad. I'm not giving away my house." They kept insisting that I should share, but I stood my ground. The call ended abruptly, and I thought that was the end of it. But I was wrong. A week later, at work, I got a notification from my Ring camera. I was in a meeting, so I couldn't check it right away. When I finally did, I was shocked. Ethan was standing on my porch alone. He pulled out a key, the spare key I'd given my parents for emergencies, and let himself in. I watched the footage on my phone in horror. Ethan walked through every room, opening closets, checking the water pressure in the bathroom. He even stood in my bedroom doorway, filming the room with his phone. It was as if he was already planning to move in. That night, I called my mother. "Did you give Ethan my spare key?" I asked. There was a long pause. "He just wanted to see if the house would work for the kids," she said. I was livid. "Mom, this is my house. You can't just let him in like this." She tried to downplay it, but I could tell she knew she was in the wrong. The next Thursday, it happened again. This time, all three of them showed up at my house while I was at work. I watched on the live feed as my father unlocked the door with the spare key, and Ethan came in with a plastic bag from the hardware store. They were changing the locks. My neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, a retired lawyer, noticed me looking distraught when I got home that evening. I showed her the footage, and she was appalled. "This is criminal trespass," she said. "They entered your home without your consent and changed the locks. You need to take action." She advised me to gather more evidence, back up the footage, change the locks again, and file a formal trespass warning if they came back. I followed her advice. I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. I also added a second camera to cover the back door. On Friday morning, my mother sent a message in our family group chat. "Please pray for our family. Judith is refusing to help her brother and his children in their time of need. She's being selfish." The replies started pouring in, with many family members taking my mother's side. Ethan also texted me directly. "Come on, Judith. It's just a house. I have kids." I was so angry. 8 years of hard work, every sacrifice I'd made, and he thought it was just a house. On Saturday, they showed up with a moving truck. As my mother made that hurtful comment about the house being wasted on me, I knew I couldn't be silent anymore. I stood up, walked down the porch steps, and said firmly, "This is my house. My name is on the deed. I paid for it with my own money, and no one in this family contributed a single dollar." My father's face turned red with anger. "Don't you disrespect us," he said. I replied, "Respect is a two-way street, Dad. You drove a moving truck to my house without my permission." Ethan tried to intervene, but I wasn't backing down. My mother threatened me, saying I'd regret it when I was old and alone. But I stood my ground. Maybe. But today, I still have a house, and it's mine. When my father tried to open the door with the key, it didn't work. I told him I'd changed the locks back after Ethan changed them. His face went white when I said, "It's on camera." They knew they'd been caught. I called the police, and when they arrived, I showed them the footage. The officer looked at my father and said, "This footage shows you entering this property without the owner's consent and changing the locks. This could be considered criminal trespass." My family was shocked. My mother started crying, trying to play the victim. But the truth was out. The officer asked them to leave, and they had no choice but to comply. After they left, I filed a formal trespass warning. It was a hard decision, but I knew I had to protect my home and my boundaries. The next day was my father's birthday party at the church hall. I debated whether to go or not. I knew my mother would spin the story to make me look like the villain, but I also knew that if I didn't go, her version would become the only one people heard. When I walked into the hall, I could feel the coldness in the room. My Aunt Linda turned her back on me, and my Uncle Steve gave me a curt nod. My cousin Rachel started to come towards me, but stopped when she saw my aunt's expression. My mother stood up and gave a speech, talking about how I'd let the family down by not helping Ethan. The room was filled with murmurs of disapproval. But when it was my turn, I stood up and walked to the center of the room. I said, "I love my father. Happy birthday, Dad. But I need everyone to hear the truth. I bought this house with my own money. Last Thursday, my parents and brother entered my home without my permission and changed the locks." I then cast the footage on the TV screen. The room went silent as they watched. My father's face went white again, and my mother tried to defend herself, saying they were just trying to help. But Mrs. Thompson, who was also at the party, stood up and said, "I was there when the police came. Judith never agreed to this. Donna lied to me." The tide turned. People started to see the truth. Ethan left the party in a huff, and my parents were left speechless. In the following weeks, things started to change. Ethan applied for an apartment through the Affordable Housing Program and got approved. My mother stopped sending me long guilt-tripping messages, and the family group chat went quiet. My father called me a few weeks later. His voice was tired. "I'm not calling to apologize.
I don't know how," he said.
I just thought I was helping Ethan. I thought you'd understand because you're strong." I replied, "Being strong isn't a reason to take from me, Dad."
He was silent for a long time.
"I know," he finally said. I told him I loved him, but I couldn't trust him right now. The call ended, and I knew that things between us would never be the same. I sent an email to the family group chat, setting clear boundaries. I said that my home was off limits without my permission, and I wouldn't discuss my property or finances with them. I also said that I was open to rebuilding trust, but it would have to be through actions, not words. Some family members understood and supported me. Aunt Linda sent a message saying she was there for me, and Uncle Steve sent a thumbs up emoji. Ethan simply replied, "Fine," which was a big change for him. My neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, brought me a peach cobbler one day. "You handled this better than most lawyers I know," she said. And as I sat on my porch, sipping coffee and watching the sunset, I realized that I'd finally learned to stand up for myself. I used to think that being loved meant sacrificing my own needs for my family. But now I know that love should never mean giving up my home and my boundaries. This is my house, my life, and I'm going to protect it. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment and tell me what boundaries you wish you'd set sooner. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here.